Lydia thought she'd escaped her past, but the truth was sitting 3 rows behind her, calling someone else Mom. What happened next left Dr. Phil speechless, and an entire audience frozen in disbelief. She came on stage to talk about family forgiveness, but within minutes, forgiveness turned into a confession. A stolen child, 2 mothers, and one unbearable truth that would rewrite 17 years of love, lies, and identity. This isn't about good or evil. It's about how far love will go when it's terrified of loss, and what happens when that truth finally comes home. The studio lights felt hotter than usual that afternoon. The audience leaned forward, expecting another emotional family reunion. Maybe an apology, maybe tears. Lydia sat under the glow of those lights, her hands folded tight in her lap. Her eyes darted toward the young girl sitting beside her, Emily, 17, polite and calm. At least, she looked calm. But behind that poise was confusion. And behind Lydia's smile was something much darker. Dr. Phil had just asked a simple question. So, Lydia, what's the hardest part about forgiveness for you? For a moment, she didn't answer. Her throat moved, but no sound came. Her hands shook as she reached for a tissue. The camera zoomed in. Viewers at home saw it, that split second before everything changed. Then Lydia spoke, her voice trembling but clear. I can't keep lying. I'm not her aunt. I'm her mother, and I took her when she was 3. The words fell into silence. For 10 long seconds, even Dr. Phil said nothing. The audience gasped. One woman in the front row covered her mouth. A man whispered, "Did she just say she kidnapped her?" Emily blinked. "What?" she whispered. "Mom, what are you talking about?" The producers exchanged glances. A guard moved closer to the edge of the stage. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his face unreadable. "I need you to clarify that," he said slowly. "You took her." Lydia nodded, tears streaming. "Yes, I took her. She's my daughter. I couldn't lose her." The studio went cold. The air felt heavy, like everyone was afraid to even breathe. The live audience looked from Lydia to Emily, from Emily to Dr. Phil, waiting for someone to speak. But no one did, because sometimes the truth doesn't need an echo. It just hangs there like thunder after lightning. Dr. Phil finally spoke, voice low, steady. "We're going to take a short break." As the stage lights dimmed, Emily turned toward Lydia, her lips trembling. "Is that true?" she whispered. Lydia couldn't look at her. Behind the camera, the producer mouthed, "Keep rolling." And as they went to break, one question echoed across millions of homes watching live. What would you do if your entire childhood turned out to be a lie? 3 weeks before the taping, Lydia woke up to the sound of wind pushing against her trailer windows. The desert outside her home in New Mexico stretched endless and silent. To her neighbors, she was just another small-town woman, quiet, friendly, a bit private. To Emily, she was Aunt Lydia, the woman who'd raised her since she could remember. But that morning, something arrived that cracked Lydia's calm world in half. A letter, plain white, no return address except one word stamped on the corner: Genity Sure DNA testing. Emily had mailed her DNA kit weeks ago for a school project. Lydia told her it would be fun, a way to learn about her heritage. She didn't expect it to come back to this. Lydia held the envelope for hours before she opened it. Her hands shook so badly she had to steady them on the counter. When she unfolded the paper, her stomach dropped. The results didn't match her story. There was no genetic link between Lydia and her supposed niece. But there was a hit, a match to an open missing child case from 17 years ago. The name next to it made Lydia's heart stop. Amelia Torres. For a long time, Lydia just stared. The clock ticked, her coffee went cold, and the desert sun crept higher. She had spent years building this life, changing her name, homeschooling, avoiding doctors' offices, never posting photos. Every lie had been crafted with care. But now the lie was crumbling under the weight of science. She walked outside, barefoot in the sand, clutching the letter. The horizon shimmered like fire. That's when the flashbacks began, the day everything changed. 17 years ago, she'd been a 23-year-old mother, exhausted from a custody battle she was losing. Her ex, a lawyer with money and influence, had painted her as unstable. The judge sided with him. Lydia remembered his words clearly. "You'll get supervised visits." That night, when no one was watching, she made a decision she couldn't take back. She packed a single bag, diapers, formula, cash, and drove into the night with her 3-year-old daughter asleep in the back seat. She told herself it was for love, that she'd fix it later. But later never came. Now, sitting on her porch all these years later, Lydia realized the truth had caught up. The letter was more than paper. It was a reckoning. When Emily came home from school that day, Lydia tried to smile. But Emily noticed. "You okay, Aunt Lydia?" she asked. Lydia nodded. "Just tired, honey." But that night, while Emily slept, Lydia pulled out a worn photo, herself and a toddler on a faded merry-go-round. The child's eyes sparkled with the same light Emily's had. She whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." The next morning, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hi, Lydia," a calm producer's voice said. "I'm calling from the Dr. Phil show. We read your email. You said you had a story about family forgiveness. Would you be open to coming on the show?" For a moment, Lydia couldn't breathe. She didn't remember sending that email, but maybe she did. Maybe in her guilt, she'd been reaching for help. The producer continued, "Sometimes telling your truth helps others tell theirs." Lydia's throat tightened. Maybe this was her chance to end it all, to stop running. She said yes. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind whispering the same question over and over. Can telling the truth ever undo a lifetime of lies? The morning of the taping fell off from the start. The studio lights weren't even on yet, but Lydia could already feel the heat, that kind of thick, nervous heat that clings to the skin. She sat in the green room next to Emily, both dressed in soft pastel colors chosen by the producers. To the outside world, they looked like any family about to share a touching story on national television. But beneath that calm surface, Lydia's heart was pounding like a trapped bird. Emily scrolled on her phone, oblivious to the tension in the air. The producers had told them the topic was forgiving the past. Lydia nodded along, pretending everything was fine. But she knew she was walking into a storm she had created 17 years ago. On the counter sat another envelope, the same kind that had destroyed her peace weeks before. Dr. Phil's producers had asked both guests to bring family documents for verification. Lydia tried to hide her copy, but Emily noticed the official seal on hers. "What's that?" Emily asked. Lydia smiled too quickly. "Just something for the producers. Nothing to worry about." But Emily, curious as ever, picked it up. "It says my name on it." "Emily," Lydia started, reaching for it. Too late. The girl tore the seal open. The sound of ripping paper sliced through the silence. Inside, just like before, were the DNA results. Emily's hands trembled as she read them. Then her eyes froze. "Mom," she whispered. "Who's Amelia Torres?" Lydia's breath hitched. The walls seemed to close in. She reached out, but Emily stepped back. "This can't be right." Emily's voice cracked. "It says I was missing." The producer, standing in the doorway, frowned. "Is everything okay in here?" Lydia forced a smile. "Yes, just nerves." But she could tell the producer knew something was off. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Every sound, the ticking clock, the shuffle of papers, echoed like a countdown. Then, the door opened again. Dr. Phil himself stepped in. Calm, composed, observant. He had that look, the kind that seemed to see right through people. "Hey, ladies," he said kindly. "How we doing?" Emily hid the paper behind her back. Lydia tried to smile, but her lips quivered. Dr. Phil sat across from them. "Before we start," he said, "I always like to understand what brought my guests here. What's the truth you're hoping to find today?" Lydia swallowed hard. The truth. That word felt like fire. Emily looked at her, eyes red, voice shaking. "I just found out my whole life might be a lie." Dr. Phil paused. "What do you mean by that?" Lydia's throat closed. She tried to speak, but no words came. Dr. Phil's gaze softened. "Lydia, I need you to take a breath. If there's something we need to know before the show starts, now's the time." She almost confessed right then. Almost. But fear, that old, familiar fear, took over. She shook her head. "It's nothing. We'll talk about it out there." Dr. Phil studied her face, then nodded slowly. All right, we'll keep it honest. You ready? She lied again. I'm ready. As he left, Lydia turned to Emily. The girl's hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Emily whispered. I wanted to protect you, Lydia said. From what? The truth. There was no answer. Only silence. Minutes later, the stage manager called their names. The door opened to the bright blue light of the studio. The audience applause thundered like waves, echoing in Lydia's chest. She held Emily's hand as they walked toward the chairs, the ones under the spotlight, the ones from which no secret could survive. The cameras rolled. The host smiled. The truth waited. And as Lydia looked out into the sea of faces, she realized something horrifying. The woman sitting 3 rows back, quiet, pale, trembling, looked exactly like the mother she once ran from. Her past had found her, and this time, there was nowhere left to run. Is it still love if it began with a lie? The applause faded, and the red on air light blinked to life. Lydia sat down, hands folded in her lap, trying to keep them from shaking. Emily beside her wouldn't meet her eyes. Across from them, Dr. Phil leaned forward, voice calm but heavy with something that felt like gravity. So, he said, you've both come here to talk about forgiveness. The audience quieted. Cameras inched closer. Lydia could hear her pulse in her ears. Dr. Phil asked a few easy questions, the kind that let people breathe before the hard ones. Lydia answered, each word rehearsed. She told stories about raising Emily, about love and second chances. But then came the question she hadn't prepared for. Lydia, Dr. Phil said softly, what's the one truth you've never said out loud? The air thickened. Lydia's mouth opened, then closed. Emily turned to her, confusion flickering into fear. And in that moment, Lydia's walls crumbled. I can't do this anymore, she said. Her voice broke. I took her. She's not my niece. She's my daughter. I took her when she was 3. Gasps rippled through the audience. Somewhere a camera operator whispered, keep rolling. Emily's chair screeched back. You what? She whispered, her face pale. Dr. Phil didn't move. He just looked at Lydia, steady, letting the silence breathe. The studio lights hummed. Lydia's tears hit the stage floor like tiny drops of confession. I thought I was protecting her, Lydia sobbed. Her father was going to take her away. I panicked. I ran. I built a new life, and I told her a story she could live with. Backstage, a producer motioned for security, but Dr. Phil held up a hand. Nobody's leaving, he said quietly. We need to understand what just happened. Emily's voice was trembling. You kidnapped me? Her eyes filled, disbelief turning to heartbreak. All those stories, all those birthdays, they were lies? Lydia reached for her, but Emily flinched. The audience sat frozen, half pity, half judgment. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone measured but heavy. Lydia, when you love someone, the first duty you owe them is the truth. What you call love may have been fear wearing a disguise. The line hung in the air like thunder. Lydia pressed her hands to her face and wept. Emily's tears came quieter, disbelief melting into grief. The real mother, Maria Torres, stood backstage watching the monitor. Her hand covered her mouth as her knees buckled. For 17 years, she had imagined this moment, dreamed of her child's face. Now it was happening, and it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like losing her daughter all over again. Producers rushed to steady her. Dr. Phil looked into the camera, then back to Lydia. This isn't about punishment, he said. It's about responsibility. You can't heal what you won't face. Lydia nodded, shaking, whispering, I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to stop. The crowd sat in stunned silence. And then Emily did something that nobody expected. She stood up, voice cracking but clear. I still love you, she said. But I don't know who you are. Lydia collapsed into tears as security escorted her off stage. Dr. Phil remained still, eyes closed for a moment, then said quietly to the audience, sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones told in the name of love. The lights dimmed. The audience exhaled. Somewhere, Maria Torres sobbed into her hands, and a girl named Amelia tried to remember which mother's voice had sung her sleep. Can love survive the truth, or does it need the lie to live? A week after the taping, the story had spread everywhere. Morning news segments, social media, podcasts dissecting every moment of that broadcast. The clip of Lydia's trembling confession had gone viral, viewed millions of times. But behind the headlines and hashtags, 3 lives were quietly coming apart and slowly beginning to rebuild. Lydia sat alone in a small county jail cell, her hair tied back, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She hadn't eaten much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emily's face, that mixture of shock and heartbreak, and she'd whisper to herself, "You did this." A few days later, she received permission to write a letter. The producers of Dr. Phil would read it on air as part of a follow-up episode. Lydia sat down at a metal table, a single sheet of paper before her. She began to write. "I thought I was saving her. I see now I was only saving myself. I told myself it was love, but it was fear. Every bedtime story, every birthday candle was built on a lie. I took a piece of another woman's soul, and I called it motherhood. I can't undo what I did. But if there's a way to give her peace, even if I never see her again, I'll do it. She deserves to live in truth, even if it breaks me." The letter trembled in her hands when she signed it. Lydia, Amelia's mother, once in name, now only in love. Across town, Maria Torres, Amelia's biological mother, was sitting in her kitchen, reading her own letter from Dr. Phil's team. Her daughter had agreed to meet her. After 17 years, Maria would finally get to hold her again. But Maria wasn't angry. Her heart was too tired for anger. That night, she began her own letter, one that would air immediately after Lydia's. "To the woman who raised my daughter, you stole my years, but you gave her life. You taught her to read, to laugh, to trust. And though you lied, you did not hate. I can't forgive the act, but I can forgive the pain that drove it. Because if I hold on to hate, I'll lose her all over again. My only prayer is that Amelia knows she can love us both, and that our love for her won't cancel each other out." When Dr. Phil read both letters on air, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. The audience sat in silence, the weight of 17 years pressing against their hearts. Then came the moment no one expected. Amelia, now knowing the truth, walked onto the stage. She didn't speak right away. She just looked out at the empty chairs where both her mothers had once sat. Finally, she said, "I don't know what my name means anymore, Emily or Amelia, but I know who I am. I'm not the lie they lived. I'm the truth they found." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were strong. She reached in her bag and pulled out 2 photographs, one of Lydia holding her as a child, and one of Maria from a faded missing persons poster. "I don't want to choose," she said softly, "so I won't." She placed both photos on her nightstand that night, side by side. 2 lives, 1 truth. 2 mothers, 1 daughter who finally knew her story. The camera panned out. A quiet room, a young woman between 2 frames of her past, and the narrator's voice returned, steady and reflective. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about releasing the weight of the past so it doesn't crush who you are becoming. Dr. Phil's voice followed. "Sometimes the truth destroys the life you built. But if you face it, if you let it, it can build something better. Because healing doesn't start when you stop hurting. It starts when you stop hiding." And as the credits rolled, the audience at home sat silent, staring at the screen, thinking about their own truths, the ones still waiting to be told. What would you forgive if it meant freeing yourself? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Secrets don't lose power until they're spoken, and truth, no matter how painful, can still set you free. Subscribe for more real stories about truth, family, and forgiveness, because healing always begins with honesty.